Hello everyone, welcome to Series 2 of the GBA Lightbulb Sessions. The Great British Entrepreneur Awards, in association with BT Skills for Tomorrow, have designed a free live stream series of Lightbulb Sessions to support small businesses and entrepreneurs with insightful and advice-driven sessions featuring some of the UK's brilliant entrepreneurial minds to illuminate your path to entrepreneurial success. You can find out more about BT Skills for Tomorrow by heading to their website at www.bt.com/skills for tomorrow or by clicking on the link in the comments section. In today's session, Great British Entrepreneur Awards Head of Content Jonathan Davis will speak with founder and CEO of Mintago and co-founder and former CMO of Perkbox, Chieu Cao. Chieu will discuss the importance of creating an employee-centric environment, the value of employee engagement and benefit culture, and how you can support your employees directly and holistically to improve your relationships with your team, even with remote working. There is an opportunity to ask questions during this session. If you have a question you'd like to ask, you can pop this in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to get to these throughout the session. And with that, I'll pass over to our host today, Jonathan Davis.
Yeah, thanks, Chloe, and Chieu, thanks for joining us today. As Chloe mentioned, you're probably best known for your time with Perkbox and now working on Mintago. But I want to start off looking at the early stages of your career. You're working in some pretty big tech businesses, the Amazons, Yahoos, Microsofts of the world. But going from that, which kind of came first? Was it a desire to start your own business, or was it kind of the spark with the well-being industry that kind of shifted you in that direction?
Well, firstly, thanks for having me, Jonathan. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today. Right, so when I had the first 10 years of my career, you're right, I was working for some of the biggest brands, biggest names in the tech industry. My background was in marketing, and I really enjoyed it and thrived in that environment. And after 10 years, I realized I wanted something different. And I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. My parents would always tell me, stories about how they run their business and trials and tribulations. So I really wanted to start a business. I didn't know exactly what it was. What I knew was it had to be something I really enjoy and love. And it was only after years of starting Perkbox that we evolved into a well-being business. And for me, the fact that I can participate in a space that I really enjoy was a win-win. But definitely the desire to start a business has to be the same as the desire to work in the space that you love. Otherwise, the grinds of starting a business would wear you out if you truly aren't fully in it.
Yeah, definitely. And so obviously you said there that it was almost a balance between wanting to start a business and the kind of industry that you went into. So many well-being businesses today, especially, are kind of positioning themselves in a wider consumer market to hit as many people as possible. Where did the inspiration come from to focus on employees and workers rather than just go out to the whole market?
Yeah. So one of the things I felt strongly about, is what we've done at Perkbox and also now Mintago is that we are a social impact business. And for me, it's having social impact is not enough. It needs to be at scale. So it needs to reach as many people as possible. So, because for me personally, I feel that life is too short. You need to, if you want to spend time building something, make sure that you have a large enough addressable audience. And what we found out is by going through the employer, you're reaching out to a much larger group of people than if you were going directly. And especially with well-being, whether it's like through Perkbox or through well-being with Mintago, it's a lot of the B2C solutions. People have to be self-selected. They need to choose to download the app. They need to acknowledge that there's a problem, and so that's generally smaller than the audience that we see when you go through the employer, because through an employer you can capture a much broader audience, and most of which, or some of which, don't even recognize that it's a problem. But because it's a workplace program, they participate in it. And so what we found out is we have a much wider reach when going through the employer route. And also we've learned that, and this is just through trial and error, learned through research, that employers are a key trusted source of information. And so if you really want to educate the population, going through the employer is actually a really good channel.
Excellent. And obviously once you've started building you built the concept, built the brand, built the idea. If we look at the wider kind of business space, it wasn't that long ago that they were almost entirely results driven. It was all about the bottom line, all about the profit. How difficult was it, particularly as a startup in that space, to shift perspective away from finances and profits and bottom lines onto working for their people?
That's a really good question. And to be fair, it's still very much a challenge, right? And what we found is that there's a spectrum of businesses. Some businesses are much more aligned to what you've said, the bottom line, the ROI measurements, and they only do, and their actions only are reflected with that result in mind. And then you have the other end of the spectrum where it's more culture-led, benefit-led companies, founders that believe that if you help your employees thrive and be happy and fulfilled in their personal lives as well as their work lives, that they will actually contribute to the business. So it is hard. It's a cultural shift. And the other thing that we've seen is that with millennials, there is a demographic shift in expectations in terms of from the employee, from the bottoms up, asking for more than a paycheck. You need to be the employer that reflects my values, and my values around well-being, personal, physical, mental, financial well-being. Are you the employer that offers that? If not, then I'll go work somewhere else. And so to be competitive, employers are recognizing that there's a strong between offering benefits and well-being and being competitive. So there is that link, and it's for some businesses they are much more aware of that and have to see the connection. For others, they're less connected. So it's still an ongoing problem that we see.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really important point that we have seen over the last few years, isn't it? That potential employees are so much more conscious about what else is offered beyond, as you said, the paycheck. And in that sense as well, that you mentioned the spectrum. How quickly did you find it with Perkbox and Mintago that the businesses on the other end of the spectrum that are results and profit driven, how quickly did they start to understand that there isn't just a good thing to do to kind of look after your teams, that they are starting to realize actual benefits? And if you could just run through what some of the actual real benefits to the business are as well.
Sure. I think that the easiest way for some of these companies who are sort of latecomers to take notice is when they see their competition deploying programs like Perkbox and Mintago, and they're asking the questions of why are they doing that? Is there something missing here that we're missing? And then when they dig in a bit deeper, perhaps through HR, through surveys, internal surveys, they start to learn that the sentiment and the drivers of performance is deeply ingrained in these programs. The culture needs to change. And so I think when you have people that are aware of that, and so and then seeing that they need to be competitive, they are shifting their behaviors. And I think that the biggest challenge is actually a cultural shift from actually wanting to do that to actually talking about it at the office and working through HR to have an internal communication program saying, we are giving you these benefits because we care, because we want to see differences in how we are doing as a company. It is a cost to us as a company, but hopefully you recognize that it's also something that can motivate you and help the business grow. So I think there's got to be a shift in management as well that needs to come along with this. And that when you see that, that's when you see companies moving in the direction that others who are more advanced in their communication, in their culture, and their communication.
Yeah, and do you see, when you get a new client, do you see it almost happen where working with Perkbox, working with Mintago is kind of like the first step for them, where it's like, oh, okay, we can sign up to this platform. Our team are going to get benefits from it. We can kind of let it sit, and from there it kind of develops into, as you said, the more cultural shift, where it is a more all-around approach for the business.
Yeah, it's we've seen all sorts of companies. Some companies who do it as a tick box and who just want to do it just to see what happens next. Others see it as an integrated benefit package, a well-being program, and it actually it varies from company to companies, but also varies from company size as well. And I think a lot of the benefits that we talk about, whether it's employee benefits and discounts and savings, engagement benefits through Perkbox or through financial well-being through Mintago, is very easy to understand and communicate. But the challenge for a lot of these employers is, what do we do next? We deploy that. Do we measure the outcomes? So what are the outcomes? So that's what I'd say is the next frontier, to really embrace the products, look at the solutions, but also find ways to understand the value they contribute. So one good way is to look at surveys. So it's not about just deploying it, but ask the question before and after. What do you want? What are things out there that makes you happy and makes you more engaged at the workplace? And then afterwards, is this what you want? Is this what you expected? Has it changed the way you look at your work and your personal lives and your work lives? So it's just as important to have a sophisticated means of communicating and listening to your audience as it is to deploy programs like this. They go hand in hand. Without the communication, it really is ineffective, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you've mentioned, Mintago is more focused on financial well-being. Was that kind of a natural step, having worked on Perkbox, to move from more of the health and well-being and perk side of it to the actual financial planning and well-being aspect?
Yes. So when I was looking at my time and what I wanted to achieve, and I was really proud of what we've done at Perkbox and the team. It took me a long time to understand that. I built a great team, and I've taken one of the best advice I've had in my career, and that's to hire people smarter than you. Always, at every turn, and that's what I did at Perkbox. So I built a great team. I was a CMO there. I built a great marketing team. Our marketing director and everyone in that team have just taken it to the level where I could not have done myself. And I looked at the space afterwards and realized, what am I still very passionate about? What do I really want to do with my free time? Who am I? So as a person, so I found that I'm an entrepreneur. I like to create new things. I like to disrupt the status quo. And I found that financial well-being is very fragmented. It's actually really hard to fix for a lot of people, and it's complex. Yet there's an opportunity here. And so when we looked at that, realized that mental well-being is also connected to financial well-being. Obviously, if you stress out about money, you're not going to sleep well. It's going to affect your behavior and your productivity at work. So we're looking to solve for the root cause. And so who's doing that, and why is that being done? Hasn't been there. So that's why I kind of moved and really thought about Mintago as a holistic, unbiased financial well-being platform that really solves for the root causes. And to be unbiased is really important to us. We really don't want to be funded by any kind of financial product. We really want to solve for the root cause and really put every employee on the right journey. And so for us, that's a huge opportunity that I couldn't avoid, basically.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. And I'm curious to know, have you found the uptake of Mintago harder or easier than Perkbox?
It's a mixed bag, I have to say. It depends on the audience that you deal with, I think, and the different programs that we have on the platform as well. So, for example, we have a very strong pension optimization program, which allows employees to find lost pensions, consolidate the review of all their past pensions, and also help them plan for the future. Now, one of the things that we found out is the average employee has about 11 pension pots floating around in their careers. And there's about 20 billion pounds worth of unclaimed pensions. And so we look at financial health and well-being holistically. We're saying, well, hold on, let's just sort this out for a lot of people, because they're not contributing enough. They're not even calculating how much they need before they retire. And the best time to start is in the 20s, because of compound interest. If you wait until your 30s and 40s, you're not going to catch up in time to actually have a retirement. And so for certain people, it's very easy to communicate. But one of the things that we want to do, and I'm really proud of as a company, is that we really want to change society. We want to tell and make young people feel that pension is actually important. It's sexy. It's a topic that you should get to know, because if you don't start in your 20s, society is going to really, hit a brick wall one of these days in the near future, actually. So part of me feels like I really want, even though it's hard, it's not about just engaging with the people that want to engage with us. It's actually looking at society as a whole. So what can we do to really help people? First is sort out that one journey. So we're built on a system of journeys, and one journey is the pension journey. And then you have all these other journeys like getting out of debt, improving your credit score. So those are really good for young people as well. And then you have the retirement journeys, buying a house, you name it. And so for each journey, we give you a series of steps, guides, solutions, tools. And so it's a simple concept, but it's very powerful in practice because it's very tailored to every individual. So I'd say, let's start by understanding who actually what motivates each individual. So a 45-year-old and 25 have very different financial needs, but also needs in their lives as well. So the engagement is harder for some groups, but actually it's more powerful because the thing has more deep-rooted impact. It is not just about the solving for the here and now. It's about your whole life basically, and if you can nail that, I think it's a mission worth fighting for.
Yeah, absolutely. In sense, certainly, like as you said, probably powerful is the perfect word there. And so I guess the challenge is, like you said, making pensions sexy compared to discounted gym memberships and activities and things like that. That's something that everyone will easily go, yeah, that sounds great. But if someone wants to talk to you about your pension, you're probably not going to be as enthusiastic about it. So I guess that's the biggest
Absolutely.
challenge for you going forward.
Absolutely, it's one of the biggest challenges, but I think it's important to address it. But I think as any business, we have to learn to pivot and find opportunities where they arise. So this focus on pension hasn't been my original idea. It just came to the fore because employers care about it. They contribute a lot to the pensions, and yet they don't know how employees are looking at it. Some there's a government minimum of 8% contribution. Some employers do much more, but the employees don't actually recognize that as a benefit. But it really is. I mean, it's cash, but obviously cash in the future, for a lot of people, it's not as valuable as cash right now. But still, you need to look at money in different ways, and I think that's part of creating a very disruptive company that's valuable and big over time, is that you really need to tackle big problems and solving it. And so when you have a team of people that believe in that purpose and that mission, it becomes more real. It becomes something that I think we can actually achieve, because it's not just my idea in my head. I need to bring along a group of people that care passionately just as much as I do, but also have the ability to create these products, to create these changes, to communicate with the teams and the employees in ways that they haven't been communicated before. Like you said, let's make pension sexy if that's what it takes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, we've all lived through the past, 10 months now, something like that, where so many of us are working from home. We're both home right now. And while it does offer a lot of benefits to so many people, we've seen a lot of talk about how challenging it can be for individuals, for teams, but particularly for businesses engaging with their staff and kind of maintaining that employee-focused culture and employee-centric culture, as you've put it. How can that kind of continue if we are looking at remote working or hybrid working for a long period of time, far beyond these sort of 10 months? Can businesses really kind of carry that through when working remotely?
It is hard. I have to say it's hard. And I think one of the things that we run the risk of becoming when you have a team of remote working, a team of people working remotely, is that you start to lose natural human relationships and end up with very transactional relationships. You log on to Zoom, you talk about what you need to talk about, you log off, you get back to work. And that for me is quite dangerous, because that really, it eats away at the culture. So during normal times, you have your lunch breaks where you sit down, you just talk about anything but work sometimes, right? Just to get to know your colleagues and just know the person behind the work. You don't have that with remote working necessarily. So what do? You have to consciously avoid that by saying, okay, let's just talk about our weekends or hobbies or anything that kind of makes it more human, and it is a hard thing. But what I've also heard is that it requires a different set of management skill set as well. So you have to be a lot more organized. You have to be able to communicate goals and achievements more clearly, and so people kind of know what's going on. So there's the human side, but also there's the, how do you motivate and galvanize people to show successes and celebrating? So remote sort of peer-to-peer recognition, online recognition, reward recognition is really important. Something that Perkbox does really well, where you show people socially or digitally the successes that the teams have. You do as much as you can in that regards, but it's hard. Everyone's learning. Like I don't profess to be a remote working expert, but what I'm seeing is that you want to be able to maintain those human relationships as much as possible and not let technology be the barrier.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I saw something this morning actually on the BBC. I'm not sure if you saw it. It was a brief article kind of discussing the concept of having Zoom lunches with your colleagues, so that you do still get that kind of time to, as you said, not talk about work, but just talk about just about everything else. And so I thought that was quite an interesting concept. And looking at the pandemic, how have you seen businesses take it? Have they kind of scaled back on their use of Mintago and things like that, so that it's like, right, it's a tough time for us, we need to scale back on what we're spending? Or has it gone the other way and businesses have realized how tough it is for their employees and thought, no, we actually need to almost double down in our efforts to do things for our employees?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. It really depends on the business, and some are in real tough financial situations, and I think it's as an entrepreneur, I can understand how they have to cut costs. I mean, if it's a choice between employing one employee and having, rather than putting them out of work and having benefits, it's a tough decision. And sometimes, it is about cutting costs at every corner. But then what you realize is that it's a short-term fix, but it's not. It becomes a long-term problem, because if that dents the culture, you're giving fewer people more work, fewer benefits. What does that add up to? Really, what does that add up to? Like, and so I think it's a touch and go situation where a lot of companies who can see the value of it, they need to communicate to their staff. So we have to cut back on benefits now for the next 3 to 6 months, but it'll come back. Or you need to be able to communicate to them that these things aren't always permanent. It's important. But yeah, I left from my perspective, yes, I'd say, like, you don't want to erode what's actually very important for people, even though you may not see the exact benefits right away. What we offer is something that is truly beneficial in the long term as well. With Mintago, it is a foundational set of services that helps people with their personal lives as much as their, what's reflected at work. And if you help people holistically in that sense and see people as people and not just as workers, then you realize, what impacts their mental, the financial, and the physical well-being holistically at work and at home is really what the remit should be for leading employers that really genuinely want to be the employer of choice in the forefront of their industries. So yeah, it is hard. You see, like I said, especially in businesses where the ROI-based businesses probably say, no, it doesn't directly relate to an ROI. We probably have to cut that. To others saying, hey, we can't maintain our culture at all costs. If we lose our culture, and this is a strong link to that culture, we lose a lot of what's valuable to us.
Yeah, excellent. And holistically is a word that you've mentioned quite a lot in our conversation. So in practical terms, how do you go from kind of a traditional way of operating a business and treating your employees? How do you actually take those steps to engaging with them and supporting them directly and holistically?
I think it starts with what I said before. It starts with good communication, honest communication. You want to offer something that is genuinely relevant and helpful for your staff as well. So ask the question, sit down with the team and understand what their socioeconomic background is like. What life stages are they? Do they have a family, or are they in their 20s? What are the challenges in their lives do they have based on those backgrounds? And then that's where you start by understanding your profile. Now, larger organizations, obviously, the larger it becomes, the harder it becomes, and the more diverse in terms of, like, when you have senior management, then it becomes the demographic, divisions around, those who have kids and, in the 40s or 50s versus those who are in the 20s. What do you offer everyone that makes sense to everyone is the question. And so that becomes harder. But then again, it's not hard when you actually know what they want and you allow them to choose as well, and allow them to be involved in the conversation. Because when you deploy a program, it needs to come with a very strong message. We're giving you this because we care, because we think that you'll use it, and we also want to hear back from you. So make sure that we are spending the money in the right places. And so all that needs to come together. And so that's really my view of having a holistic program. It's not just about having great partners like ourselves involved in that program, but the communication channels. And I've seen, for example, I've seen companies who do it for the wrong reasons. But pre-pandemic, you walk past an office and you have a pool tables all empty. No one's actually using it. But obviously, it looks good that they're doing something for their staff. And then you start asking around, so why aren't anyone using that pool table? It's like, well, it looks like we're lazy. We spend time at the pool table. It's like, hold on, that doesn't make sense anymore. It's like, you buy it so people can use it. But so that's why communication is important, right? So, take time off, you work hard. These are the benefits you have to use. So I think that's key. And I think the other thing that really makes the difference here is culture. So, if that's the glue that connects everything, if you want a very strong culture, and every company has a different culture, everyone needs to believe in the same thing, act in similar ways, and move forward in the same direction. And so it could be, financial services where they're a lot more disciplined, or it could be a wacky kind of fun-loving Perkbox kind of culture. It doesn't matter like what culture is, as long as everyone loves and enjoys and buys into that culture. So when you have that, these programs are naturally very easy to deploy because everyone knows what they want.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the pool table example there. What are the dangers of trying to follow this approach as a box ticking exercise more than anything else? What can it do to a business?
Well, it could just backfire. Yeah, because people can, funny enough, like with social media, with Glassdoor, people can see through that. And the risk for companies is that people don't tell their managers, they just leave, and what they leave behind is a really bad Glassdoor review. And they find after the fact that, things have been really bad. So I think honesty and transparency is really what managers need to really respect, and really follow through. And it's not like in the old days where you have a job for life and there's no social media, and competition is not as it's not as competitive, and movement between jobs is not as fluid. Now with remote working, you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to move cities. You can just get a job anywhere, and you can be in a different country. So I think the competition has really increased. The level of expectations of employees have increased. And so that basically means management needs to up their game, provide value for benefits, pay, career development at the level that's expected from their team. So both parties needs to are upping their game in that sense.
Yeah, definitely. We've had quite a few questions come through, so I'm thinking that there's a fair few to get through. I think we've probably touched on a few of them a little bit, but we'll go through them with about 15 minutes left. So we've had one. This one's anonymous. This person says that they've had to put a few of their stuff on furlough during the pandemic. What should they be doing to check in on them?
Wow, that's a hard one. I hear people being on furlough, really being anxious, whether they're going to come back to a job or not. And I think being open and transparent is the best policy. If a company knows that there won't be a job waiting, allow them to look elsewhere or plan for that eventuality. But also, we know that benefits are available, should be available to furlough people. I think from a tax point of view, there's that opportunity. So be as inclusive as possible for certain benefits that will obviously look into them yourselves, see whether that's feasible, but do extend whatever benefits you can, because you still want to have them feel like you're still part of the team, even though they're not there working. And so that's the key thing. And keep the communication channels open. And how you treat people who are on furlough also reflects on the people who are working full time, right? So I think that's an important thing. Like everything you do and everything you don't do gets sort of analyzed and digested amongst the team. That's the lesson I learned growing, especially with Perkbox, when you have over 150 employees. You know, I'll make a silly comment or say something off the cuff, and it gets recorded, analyzed, digested, and blasted out. It's like, hey, Chieu said that. It's like, did I? I had no idea. So it's really important that you treat everyone and recognize their situation in a very transparent way.
Yeah, fantastic. And this is another anonymous one, but a really important one, I think, touching on the financial well-being aspect. This person's asking how you get people to talk about finances more openly, because we know what a lot of society is like. You know, we don't want to reveal our salaries. We don't want to talk about how much we save. We just don't like talking about money generally. So how do you get people to open up on that subject?
Sure. It's a really good question and something that we deal with all the time. I think, with the pandemic, with the economic downturn, it's becoming a lot easier. And we talk about, because people can take another example, mental well-being. A few years ago, it hasn't been accepted at all. It feels like it was a personal problem. You deal with it at home. Now it's much more accepted at the workplace. So there are cultural shifts that we see, and I think financial well-being will experience a similar kind of pathway. We need to start being aware of how money worries affect people versus the actual financial circumstances is one way to get at this. You have money worries, you have, your partner may not be employed anymore. How's that affecting your health, your mental health? How does that make you feel? So I think that's a very safe approach to talking about financial worries. It's not about how much money you make or where you spent, your money over the weekend. It's about how does that affect you as a person, your mental state. So there's a strong connection. So I'd say that's one way to go in. And then this is, we have tools to help you overcome some of this, so you feel less stressed. So that's one way to humanize a financial problem, and something that I think is a safe place for people to start. So we want to help you feel better about your money. We're not going to criticize about your poor financial decisions or whatever. Let's get to the point where you're more in control of your finances and make you feel better. So I think the link between the two is really important to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And another one on the financial health aspect. Obviously, a lot of employers have workers from a vast array of ages and generations. I guess I'll add a little bit into the question and say, does Mintago kind of tailor the conversations depending on generations and ages? And then this person is asking, as a business owner, should they?
Absolutely. And one of the things I'm really proud of on the platforms that is designed to be product agnostic, people age agnostic, meaning it doesn't really matter what age you want. You select the journeys and the programs you want. And because of that, it's very inclusive. It doesn't matter if you're on 100K or on 20K as well. So it is really powerful in that sense. What it does start with is what you want to get out of your financial future, your financial life. And that's really what you want to ask people. If you're a 25-year-old, what do you want to do? Do you want to get out of debt? Do you want to improve your credit score? Do you want to get on the housing ladder? Okay, we have journeys for that. If you're a 45-year-old, okay, retirement, remortgaging, how do you remortgage? And putting your kids through school, how does that work out? It's obviously I'm biased, but I'm really proud of what we have and the ability to help people at different stages of the career. So do have a look. Come to our website. Our team will be more than happy to explain to you. But also, if you're a business owner, we can help you optimize your pensions through our salary sacrifice pension scheme. You can save about £500 a year in national insurance contribution. So that's a bonus that we can just get you going on that as well for a business owner. I have to plug that, but definitely it's a good plug because you were actually helping you as a company save money through salary sacrifice pensions.
We've got one from someone called Harry Bevan, who asks, what would be my first step to pulling together an employee benefit program? What are some of the basics to include?
First step is to ask your team what they want, right? Depending on how big they are, it's always good to ask, because it puts them in a position of inclusion, right? Because you're giving something that they are aware of, but also you need to make a decision ultimately, right? So financial well-being is one of those topics where if you want the healthy food or the unhealthy food, most people go after the unhealthy food, the free, so we have to kind of figure out what is it that makes it a balance between the two, and offer them something that is cost effective, but ultimately will benefit them over the long term. I think, issues like stress, you need to figure out, well, where is stress coming from? Is it financial worry stress, or is it physical? Is it, do they need yoga classes, or do they find, like, mental stress can be manifested and solved in different ways as well. So mental well-being is a big area. So I think the first start is just ask your team, and then look around. There's lots of great benefits in the market that can solve for various different groups of people, and talk to your peers. Other co-founders are really good. Founders are really good at explaining, what's worked for them as well. So yeah.
Excellent. We've got one from. We've actually got two that I'm going to cover from, and I hope I get the pronunciation right. Suna Yokes. Really apologise if I've just butchered your name there. So Suna says, I hear a lot about leading by example. How do you feel that leaders can do this on an individual level?
In terms of when you say leading, is it just general management overall, or is it within the benefits space, or what?
I think given the conversation, we'll go with in the benefit space and well-being.
Yeah, so I think leaders need to show that they need to focus on management and leadership. And leadership comes with, in my view, has a lot of empathy built in. And what does that mean? That means understanding your team. Leaders by definition have followers, right? Otherwise you have dictators. So I think that's a very simple way of saying, to be a great leader, you need to ensure that they follow you. For them to follow you, you need to ensure that they understand that you understand where they're coming from. And the hardest thing that I had to learn over time is to manage my communication better. And one tip that I have is when you have a team meeting, especially if it's a very contentious one or a very debatable one, to speak last, to never put your views first, because what happens is that if you're very adamant about your view and you're the first to speak, it just changes the conversation, and you risk losing great ideas from people who may not be as forceful as you are, or at a different kind of levels in the business. And by changing that one thing, I've changed my whole management style, and people feel like, oh, well, I'm a listener. Well, yeah, I'm a listener, but because they got to talk. Allowing them to talk made me look like I'm a better listener. but it's a funny concept, but it's really true, and it's very powerful. And it's one of the things I definitely, and you can apply that to everything, your one-to-ones and everything. Just listen first before speaking. It's my advice.
I think that's a really great point, and I've just had a message from Suna to say that I didn't butcher any. I'm going to spot on, which is great. And her second question, ask from a personal point of view, what would you say is your biggest weakness as a leader, and how do you approach that?
Wow, I'll have lots. I'm not perfect by any means. Well, I think the key thing is to understand that from the very beginning and hire people that are better than you in those areas. So, for example, I have for running my day-to-day business, financials. I'm a dreamer. I like to see blue sky, have blue sky thinking, and build the big things and really change society and create amazing products. The nuts and bolts aren't really my thing. So I need to get someone to kind of manage the nuts and bolts of am I stretching this idea too far? So, having a great, a finance director, great product team that can really, counterbalance my blue sky thinking, and really with the real world, the rational world, in terms of will these connect? And so I think those are the kinds of things that you need to kind of be very open about. And the more you're open about it, the better, because it empowers the people that are different from you to step up. Because you're saying, I need you to do this because I'm not good at it. And that is that's a great feeling when you have people that can look after you, and that they know they're valuable, but they also have a position in the company that they need to own, right? Ownership. And so what you need to really have as a company and really focus on is purpose. It's like, we're all here to do this. This is the dream. And focus on purpose and hire for purpose, but don't tell people what to do necessarily, because when you do that, they'll start asking you, what do I do next? Because you've been telling me to do everything now, and then you become the bottleneck, and everything falls down from there. So it's a downward spiral if you do it that way. That's what not to do, versus what to do is to hire for purpose, focus on purpose, and focus on great leadership and communication.
Excellent. I think we've probably got time for one more. It's, what one piece of advice would you give to an entrepreneur with a small team for employee engagement?
For employee engagement, it's still very important. Small doesn't mean it's not any less valuable. If anything, if you have the money, ask them what they want. And in certain ways, you can actually afford a bit more. So what is it per month that you can afford to pay? Is it £5 or £10? And then you ask them and tell them, hey, look, this is all we have. Now that we have a small team, this is what we can afford. But as you grow from like 5 to 10 to 50, typically what happens is it becomes, unwieldy. And that's where, the negotiations and the compromises needs to happen. But it should be a lot easier because you know them, you sit around the table with them. And I think the thing is, are there programs that can cater to such small sizes is potentially the issue here. But it's just like buying for a group of friends and family that kind of thing, right? It's a small group. That's how you should see it. And you should make sure that everyone enjoys it, because you can ask, because they're a lot smaller as a group.
Okay, Chieu, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a really, really interesting conversation. And I think I speak for everyone who's joined us today, that it's been really, really insightful and packed full of advice. So thank you so much for your time. And with that, I will pass back to Chloe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just to echo what Jonathan said, we've had such lovely comments in the chat section saying this is one of the best, most focused webinars I've attended. Thank you so much. A great session. So Chieu, thank you so much for joining us. And John, thank you for hosting the session today as well. Chieu, do you have any final words before we sign off?
Well, good luck, everyone. I know being an entrepreneur is really hard. We need to work with each other, help each other to succeed. So do reach out with me on LinkedIn. Happy to help where I can. I'll make time where possible, but I'm glad you enjoyed the session, and good luck.
Thank you very much. I have included Chieu's LinkedIn profile further up in the comments towards the beginning of the session, so you can connect with him through that link. Our next Lightbulb session will be at the same time next week with Rory Fairburns and Hannah and Sophie Pycroft to discuss building a thriving community for business success. If there is anything you'd like to catch up on from today's session, we'll be sending out a replay of this recording later on today. You can find the replay and future sessions at www.lightbulb-sessions.heysummit.com. Thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you again, Chieu and John.
Thank you.